So I want to use the remaining time to give a short summary of what I just said in English. Last time I just started with the beginning of the Hotsubodaishin chapter. I will translate it on the spot from the Japanese. So Dogen Zenji begins with saying that the Chinese character Shin, which is read in Japanese as Shin, has three different meanings in Sanskrit, or the same character is used to translate three completely different three words. The first one is chitta, which means our ordinary thinking, human mind. The second one is kalita, which means something like a life force that can also be found in plants and trees. And the third one is hidya, which is also the shin that you find in the Hanya Shingyo, the Heart Sutra. In this case, the heart stands for the essence of the matter. So shin can mean all three of these. And when we talk about bodhi shin, bodhi mind, which of these three minds do we mean? Do we mean a life force? Do we mean the essence of the universe? Or do we mean our ordinary thinking minds? And Dogen Zenji says, to my surprise, when I first read that, he says, to arouse bodhi mind, you need the first thinking mind. You need a human, ordinary, differentiating thinking mind. In India, bodhi, was called bodhi, and in China it was called bodai or do. So the same word, bodaishin, can also be called doshin. Doshin means the mind of the way mind. These are actually the same terms, so to speak. Bodai and do mean the same thing, which is bodhi. So in India, bodai is bodhi and shin is chitta. And that means for Dogen Zenji, without chitta, without this ordinary thinking mind, you won't be able to share in bodhi mind. That, of course, doesn't mean that your ordinary thinking mind as it is now is already bodhi mind. No. But without this thinking mind, you won't arouse bodhi mind. So that sounds surprising, but you can also understand it. For example, in the Gakudo Yojinchu, Dogen Zenji said, to really understand impermanence, that's the arousal of bodhi mind. When you understand life is impermanent, you could die any minute. Actually, it's a wonder that you're still alive today. You could have died last year and nobody would have noticed. It's a miracle that you are alive today and you don't know if you have tomorrow. If you practice with that attitude, that's bodhi mind. But probably it's impossible to have that kind of realization unless you're a human being, because only human beings probably have this idea of time and the idea that we live now, but at one point in the future we won't be alive anymore. We don't live forever. We only have this moment. That's a very human idea. So to have this kind of idea, you need a human mind. Probably dogs or cats, they don't worry about impermanence. And in this chapter, Dogen Zenji speaks about the wish to help others before yourself. And to have this wish, you first of all need to have an idea of a world in which you live together with others. Human beings, I think, around the age of 18 months, for the first time when they see their own, reflection in the mirror. At age 18 months, for the first time, you have the realization, oh, that's me. That's me. And probably from that time on, you build a kind of, you construct an image of the world. There's trees, there's flowers, there's dogs, there's cats, there's mom, there's dad. And then in that world that you construct, there's also a small you. Until then, everything is you. Until then, everything you see and hear and touch is you. But from that point on, when you realize, oh no, there's actually one out of many, that's me. That's more me than even mom or dad. So you construct this idea of a world which is like a stage with many actors, and you're not the stage anymore, but you're the actor, one of the actors. And from then on, it's all about the points that your player, your avatar collects. It's all about winning or losing to get the same amount or even more amount of cookies than the others in the game. And all of us play that game, and in a way that's the total opposite of Bodhisattva. But if you don't have this idea, if you don't play that game, you can not turn it around. And the idea of Bodhisattva that Dogen Zenji promotes in this chapter is kind of our usual state of mind multiplied by -1. It's kind of turning it completely around. Until then, you said, unless as long as I'm fine, who cares about the others? First, I need enlightenment. First, I want my cookies. I want a girlfriend. I want a money. I want a car, a house. And the others, maybe later. Without that frame of mind, you can't, how do you say, realize that's actually the frame of mind that makes me suffer, and I want to completely turn it around. From now on, I want to treat that person that until now came first, I want to put him last. Let's first see what I can do for the others. Let's first see what I can do for the others. Help them to find liberation, to find Satori. And if I, even until the end of the universe, will not succeed in finding liberation or Satori, even that is fine with me. Even that is fine. That for Dogen Zenji is Hotsu Bodaishin, the arousal of Bodhimind. And he says, then it's not something that existed in the past and continues until today, but it's also not something that arouses in this moment out of the blue. It's not something that we carry in ourselves naturally. It's also not something that we produce by ourselves. It's not something that's somewhere outside. It's not that Bodhi-mind is inside myself, but it's also not that I am inside Bodhi-mind. So the question is, well, where is that Bodhi-mind? How do you get in touch with Bodhi-mind? And there Dogen Zenji uses 4 characters which in Japanese are read kan no doko. I'm not quite sure how Nishijima translates them. They appear twice. Basically, after he says Bodhi-mind is not this, it's not that, not that, not that, not that. In the end, he says, in the moment, in the event of kan no doko, and kan no doko means that ways cross. Which ways cross? The way of the Buddha and the way of the ordinary suffering deluded being. When the ways of Buddhas and deluded beings cross, and they cross in your life. Your life is a crossroads of the Buddha way and the deluded way. And when you find yourself standing at this crossroad, and standing at that crossroad doesn't mean kind of some abstract. It's not something abstract, but I think it's something that happens, for example, in Antaji all the time. That you realize there's this deluded aspect of myself, but then you see the Bodhisattva perspective. Sometimes it's exemplified by your teacher, by some of your Dharma brothers. You see a perspective that's completely different. Until now, my practice was headed here, but then there's this different crossroad. There's this different road that crosses your perspective. And when these two ways cross, the way of the Buddha, Bodhisattva, and the way of the suffering, deluded being, that's where Bodhimind arises. It doesn't happen out of the blue, but it's also not something that you can produce by yourself. And once it happens, Dogen Zenji says, continue for 3 asogiko is the Japanese term. Basically, a period of time that's longer than the time between the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. Continue to practice until the Big Crunch, and after that, in the next universe, if you should be reborn in the next universe, continue there as well, with this intention of helping others before yourself. And some bodhisattvas, Dogen Zenji says, at the end of time, when all others are saved, they finally become Buddhas themselves. But there are also bodhisattvas that vow to never become Buddhas. And one thing that Dogen Zenji doesn't mention in this chapter is this idea of, in Japanese, is jimi tokudo sendo ta. Jimi tokudo means even when I am not saved myself yet, even when I haven't found liberation myself yet, sendo ta, I want to help others first. There are 3 categories of bodhisattvas in old Buddhist teaching. And when I say old Buddhist teaching, I mean teaching that existed even before the time of Bodhidharma. So these teachings existed already 2000 years ago. They said there's 3 different kinds of bodhisattvas. One that's maybe the easiest to understand, like Shakyamuni, somebody who looks for his personal enlightenment first. And after he found enlightenment for himself, he decides to teach others. You first need to find the answer for yourself before you can teach the answer to others. So that's the easiest to understand. The second category, the second kind of bodhisattva is somebody who says, I'm going to do it together with the others. I share my practice and my understanding with the others. I don't want to first practice for myself and gain enlightenment for myself, but it's more like I'm sitting in a boat with the others. We row this boat together. And in a way, that's how practice works in Antaji, I would say. It's not that we first gain Satori for ourselves and then we help the others, but we share the practice and the understanding that we gain in that practice with the others. But for some reason in this text, Dogen Zenji doesn't mention these other bodhisattvas. He says you should forget about your own Satori. Postpone it until the very end. Only think about the others. Why does he do so? Well, I think the reason is quite obvious. When you think, first I need to get enlightenment myself. First I want it for myself, and then I will be happy to share it with the others. You will never get to that point where you let go of body and mind. Throw it into the house of the Buddha. If you say, I want my enlightenment, how do you expect to ever let go of this idea of self, a self that needs to get enlightened first? So it's quite obvious that Dogen Zenji would not mention this kind of bodhisattva. How about the second one? That seems to make sense, that you say, I don't want to get enlightened first. I'm going to share my practice with others. I'm going to get enlightenment simultaneously. It's in a way like, for example, if during the Samu break, there's lots of delicious cookies in the Soto Shokudo, in the Soto Shokudo, the Tenzo has made a lot of cookies. And maybe the Tenzo thought there's going to be enough for all, but actually turns out there's not enough. When everybody wants to eat more than the others, probably nobody's going to really enjoy them. So what can you do? Well, one obvious thing is you say, well, there's actually 5 for everybody, or maybe there's only 3. Please, everybody eat the same amount, and then everybody's going to be happy. But what happens is that you still kind of compare yourself to the others. Does he also have 3? Does he have the same amount? But the 3 cookies that he ate, they seem to be a little bigger than my 3 cookies. Or for example, in practice in Antaiji, it happens that you're supposed to practice 10 years in Antaiji, and then another 10 and another 10. But there seem to be people who left Antaiji after only 6 or 7 years, and they got Dharma transmission. If they get Dharma transmission after 6 or 7 years, I want also Dharma transmission after 6 or 7 years. If it's possible to get it after 7 years, I want it after 7 years. I don't want it after 3 years. Okay, if the minimum is 7 years, 7 years is fine, but I want my Dharma transmission after 7 years. And still, even though you say you don't have this attitude, I want more than the others, I want it faster than the others, you're still comparing yourself. You're still comparing yourself. So I think that's the reason why Dogen Zenji says or implies, by not even mentioning these other bodhisattvas, what he's implying here is you shouldn't have the attitude to get enlightened before the others, and you shouldn't even have the attitude of getting enlightenment simultaneous with the others. Only when you think, and even if I never get enlightened, even if I never get a spot in nirvana, it's going to be fine. The moment this thought occurs in your mind, it doesn't matter if I ever get into nirvana. That's the moment you are in nirvana. The moment you realize a satori, it doesn't matter when I get my satori. I want the others to be fine. The moment that thought occurs, that's satori. That's satori. And as long as you think, I'm happy to get it at the same time as the others. I'm happy to get a spot in nirvana that's just as good as the spots that the others have. Even then, it's going to be really difficult to get into nirvana. And if you think you want to be first in nirvana, it's even more difficult. Okay, so much from my side for today. If you have questions, anything you would like to share, you're welcome to do so. はい、これで英語のダイジェストでしたが、ご質問等ありましたら何でも遠慮なく聞いてもらえばと思います。いかがでしょうか。地味得度鮮度化について、はい。
Lastly, talk about 3 standpoints. Bringing out the example of the cookies, right?
The example of what?
Of the cookies.
Cookies, yes, yes.
And I wanted to ask, like, what I notice is in the example of, I want more cooking than the others, like the others comes less, and also in the standpoint of I can have the same cookie of the others. I think that there is still this idea of self. So my question is the answer, is losing this idea of self the answer? Because I think that these two standpoints which you're saying that are wrong are standpoints which comes from the idea of self.
Hmm. Yeah, I think yeah, you have to well, one thing, it's important to realize that how important even a small cookie can be for ourselves. And that guy, he had one cookie more than you. Who cares? I mean, you live in Antaiji every day. You eat probably less delicious food than the people in Osaka or in Tokyo. If you would compare yourself to those, you have a hard life, but it doesn't matter to you. But if one of your Dharma brothers has just a little bit uh, more cookies than you, um, somehow you can't let that go. So it's important to realize that, first of all, that you have this attachment, even though you decided to go to Antaiji to practice and let go of yourself, it's still there. And for example, when you're the Tenzu, you cook these cookies. You put them all on the plate, you put them in the Soto Shokudo. You're still busy in the kitchen. And after half an hour, you come to the Soto Shokudo, they're all gone. And you realize people didn't leave even one cookie for me. Most of the time, as a Tenzo, you're not so happy about that. Hey, and I saw also some Tenzos that put a small amount of cookies for themselves somewhere in the kitchen in a corner because they know if I don't do that, people will eat all of them. Um, but for example, let's say you're not so clever. You don't put certain amount of cookies for yourself somewhere in the corner. You put them all in the Soto Shokudo hoping that people would think of you, but nobody thinks of you. They're all gone. But at one point, as a Tenzo, it's not that you're there every time, but sometimes you really have this what Dogen Zenji calls Kishin, Loshin, Daishin, parental mind. You're happy when you see, oh, they ate it all because they liked it. They loved the cookies so much, they wouldn't even think of me. They must have really loved these cookies. So great, great. Um, and of course, we don't have that mind all the time, but sometimes we have it and we realize, oh, that was Avalokiteshvara in this moment that gave me this thought. In this moment, it's a kind of the crossroads that Dogen Zenji talks about. Normally, you're angry when you see the plate is empty, nobody thought of you. But in that moment, there's a moment when you feel lucky that they loved the cookies so much. And of course, at the end of the day, so for example, if you would ask me, some people ask me then, well, are we supposed to live our whole lives with this attitude? But we have to eat at the end of the day. We have to drink at the end of the day. We also have to be in the ofullo. Again, the tenzo, you're in the follow last, and often it's already lukewarm because when the other people took their showers, they didn't think of that the tenzo also needs a warm shower. But of course, at the end of the day, you have to take a shower, and if it's warm, great. You also have to take care of this person. You have to take care of this person as well. But I think it's important that we stop calculating, comparing all the time, and get to this point where we think, and if even if my shower was lukewarm and I didn't have any cookies, everybody else, they loved the cookies, they had a hot shower, and now they're already asleep while I'm still cleaning the kitchen. But I'm happy. I'm happy that I could contribute to their practice.
But doesn't all these problems solve when you lose your idea of self, which is not yourself, since yourself is, not permanent? So, like, if I lose my idea of myself, then I don't have the need to uh, feed myself first, have the same amount of the others. Yeah, since I don't have an idea of me. Um, So I thought that was a thing to don't have an idea of you as one character and to prioritize you um, them more than the others.
Yes, of course. The question is that really possible on a long scale? For example, if you have completely lost this idea of yourself, this idea that you developed when you were 18 months old and you looked in the mirror and out of a sudden you realize, oh, that's me. For example, let's suppose that through practice you get back to the point where you didn't realize. So for example, in Antaj in the morning you brush your teeth, you look in the mirror and you say three, people stand there, you have no idea which of these three is you. I don't know if you really can get that far through your practice and if it's also desirable. I don't know, what's your name?
My name is Koji.
Koji?
Yeah.
Koji. And so when I asked you for your name, you answer with Koji, which seems to imply that you're still attached to this person that has the name. But suppose you get to a point where you have no idea who you are because you don't attach yourself to any of the players of the stage. That would make life pretty difficult for you and the others. So probably we have to still have a sense of who we are. And when we look in the mirror and there's three people there, we have to have an idea, well, which of these three is you? When people ask you for your name, of course, you can say like Bodhidharma, I have no idea, I don't know it. But when you want to, I don't know, get into Japan or you want to leave Japan, enter a different country, when people ask you for your passport, you have to produce that passport. So you have to make a reservation for the flight. So you have to have a certain idea who you are, which player you play in the game. But what I try to say is we also have to be kind of free of that. There needs to be a certain freedom. We should be able to let go of that. But that happens at one point in your practice and then continues forever. That if somebody calls Koji and you have no idea who could that be because you have separated yourself from that person with the name Koji, I don't think it's possible. And if it's possible, then you would need somebody who takes care of you. I think there's this book that's called The Enlightenment Ward or so. If people got enlightened to that degree that they wouldn't even know who they are, they would need people who feed them all the time, would take them to the toilet. If you would wanted to travel, you need somebody who's doing all the organizational stuff. So I don't think that's really realistic to really get back to that point when you were only 6 months old or 1 year old. And I don't think it's preferable, neither for you and not for the people around you. So we have a sense of who we are, and it's important to have that sense, but it's also important that we get beyond that point of always comparing ourselves. And the metaphor of parental mind that Dogen Zenji uses, although he never had kids, I think it's a good metaphor because when you have kids and you cook for them, usually as a mother or father, you don't compare how much your kids ate and, oh, you had more than me. As a mother or father, you're happy when you see your kids eat and they want seconds. And usually as a mother or father, you're willing to say, okay, then today I will have a little less so my kids can eat. It's just that unfortunately that's an attitude that we have towards our kids, but it's not so easy to have even with Dharma brothers. Although you're all together in Antaji for the same purpose, the others soon turn into rivals. Yeah, but back to your question, wouldn't it be easy to completely lose this sense of self? Yes, it would be easy, but I doubt it's really possible 100%. You can do that even through LSD or mushrooms. Probably it's possible to get to that state for certain hours. But I don't think it's possible for a whole lifetime. And again, I don't think it's desirable.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, like I was just talking about, to disidentify from what you think that you are yourself, when because in some sort of way you are creating the idea of yourself. So that's not yourself. And if you can disidentify, then you can give less importance yourself than, you know, than when you used to identify yourself with the idea of yourself. So I thought that this identification from the idea of yourself that you create in this game um, would allow you to give maybe more importance to the others and gain happiness by putting the others first, then the idea of yourself, which is not yourself.
Yes, um, I think, yeah, I agree. I agree. I only, just as I try to explain, I have doubts when you have this. Well, when you say, well, in Buddhism, you realize that there's no substance to the self, it's all an illusion, I'm not myself. And that's supposed to solve everything. In reality, it's not solving everything. We also need a certain, even though we realize actually I'm not just this person, you can't reduce me to this German monk who's sitting on a chair in Osaka, who's 55 years old, um, and has the name Muho. You can't reduce me to that. Even though you have this realization, still, if Muho is supposed to give a Zoom talk for Antaiji, then I have to do it. So I have to identify with this person as well. And I think it's exactly therefore that Dogen Zenji here, I was talking about it, in a way he's making this impossible claim. You should think of everybody except yourself. Why doesn't he say you should think of everybody in the same way, including yourself? That would be kind of the second bodhisattva who's rowing in the same boat with the others, sharing the same practice, sharing the same enlightenment. Why goes Dogen Zenji even one step further and say, think of the enlightenment of all beings except yourself? And I think the reason for that is because it's impossible to cut this connection between you and this person. If it would be easy to kind of disattach to this person, then we could say, just think about every people in the same way that you think about yourself. But because we attach to this person and we compare, maybe I'm thinking just a little bit too much about the others. Maybe I should care just a little bit more about myself. I think because you can't prevent that, Dogen Zenji says, don't think about yourself at all. Although, of course, you have to think about this person, yeah, but at least as kind of, how do you say, the direction is think only about the others except for this one person, Koji. Forget about that person. And it's impossible to do, but I mean, a lot of practice in Zen, it's basically Zen means to practice the impossible. You can't do it. You can't do it, but still, you try to do it.
Can I
And
make
of
a?
course, yes, please.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Mm.
But in the start, you said that in Zen, it is seen as the main, like it is the mind is seen as the main obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to understand more um, deeply about that because I just heard like until now I heard that in Zen is doing nothing. So how can it be an obstacle? Yeah, I don't quite understand how the mind can be an obstacle in Zen.
Well, the thinking mind is often called an obstacle because we construct a world, we attach to one character that we constructed in this world, the self. We make distinctions, what is good for me, what is bad, what I like, what I don't like, winners, losers. We always cut reality into two halves. And it's this thinking mind, differentiating mind, that hinders us from tasting reality before it's cut.
Sure. Sure.
And stop thinking is something that you often hear in Zen. You think too much. Stop thinking. Just do it. Something that you often hear in Zen, because when you think about what you want to do, you're not doing it anymore. You kind of separate yourself. Thinking always takes us on a level that's not really grounded.
Yeah.
If you think about life, you're not living in that moment. One metaphor in the Genjo koan is like it's like a bird that thinks about where's the sky? How do I fly? That bird would never really fly. Birds don't think about flying, they fly. Fish don't think about the ocean, they just swim in the ocean. And because of that, I said it's surprising that Dogen Zenji here seems to be kind of taking the side of the thinking mind. He says this thinking mind is not bodhi mind, but you need that thinking mind to arouse, for bodhi mind to arise. So you could say you first have to destruct the world, construct the world, in order for you to destroy this world that you constructed. But if you never constructed the world and only humans construct this world, there's also no way to destroy this world.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.